The Madsen MG machine gun in Battlefield 5 is the latest gun added to this game with the most recent sort of Tides of War update that came along with Operation Underground. If you played the Operation Underground assignments the week it launched, you could have got this gun for free, or at least for the time you put into unlocking it, or now you should be able to buy it with company coin in the armory. This weapon at face value could be seen as a replacement to the Bren with some key differences. It's also a weapon that's got a very long history. It's thought of as one of the world's first light machine guns and one that went into mass production. It was used in the Russian-Japanese War, World War I, World War II, many wars in between civil wars, revolutionary wars, and it actually was being used in service in Brazil up until I think 2008-ish. So it's kind of got this insane long history behind it. It was developed in Denmark, but clearly has seen service all over the world. So seeing this weapon reappear from Battlefield 1 in Battlefield 5 certainly makes sense from a historical standpoint, but reusing a gun from the first game to the second game, its properties, or rather its role, might have changed a bit since there's so many new weapons that it has to contend with. Where it was a relatively middle of the lane weapon in Battlefield 1, it's definitely on the slower damage side in Battlefield 5 and sort of geared more towards a accurate medium to long range machine gun that can be used from a standing position pretty effectively, but it's going to give you very slow kill times unless you start chaining some headshots in there. Now, again, on paper, the Madsen MG is most similar in its performance to the Bren gun that's been available in Battlefield 5 since launch. The Bren has been an accurate 30-round light machine gun that you can both use in bipoded and while standing up and firing. And it's not a fast-killing weapon, but it's an accurate weapon, which makes it very effective at medium and long-range distances. Especially at medium range, you can chain some headshots in there with its incredible accuracy and drop people very consistently, very quickly. It's also got very controllable recoil compared to other weapons in the game, so it shouldn't be hard to use. Much like the Bren, the Madsen is also fairly controllable, although in-game stats suggest that it's actually got better recoil control than the Bren. I found it a little bit trickier to use in terms of the recoil department, or rather, it seems like maybe the recoil gets a little bit more unruly, and for various reasons it seems like the Madsen does seem like you might need to stay on target a little bit longer when compared to the Bren. Again, according to in-game stats rather than the good hard stats, as I haven't found them on the internet anywhere, it does appear that the Madsen seems to have a little bit less damage. This could be either less maximum damage or worse damage drop-off compared to the Bren. So it does feel to me that I have to stay on target a little bit longer with the Madsen compared to the Bren. Now, depending on the way that you upgrade the Madsen, you can upgrade its standard 25-round magazine, which in my opinion is a little bit low, to a 40-round magazine, which is far more capable. When it comes to specializing this weapon, I've gone for faster aim speed on the right, then I've either gone full left side after that, or I've gone right, left, left, right. This will give me the extended magazine of 40 rounds and better recoil control in general. These are interesting trade-offs here and there. I personally think the Bren's progression tree is a little bit more useful, even with a 30-round magazine. I was finding that I enjoyed using the Bren a little bit more, but there's some other areas that aren't even stat-related that will come into play. Much like the Bren, the Madsen also feeds from the very top of the gun with a top-mounted banana-style magazine. This has obviously not been a design that's been repeated too much throughout history because of its, well, awkward ergonomics. Basically, with the Madsen, as opposed to the Bren, the optic is mounted on the right side of the gun and the magazine is mounted a little bit more on the left side of the gun. Since weapons in Battlefield 5 are generally shouldered on the right side of the screen when running around, as if you're a right-handed player, you now have to switch the magazine from obstructing the right side of your screen to the left side of your screen when aiming down sights. This does make it a somewhat obstructive ADS animation, and the size of the magazine in general is also very obstructive. It physically blocks the view of your target when aiming down sight momentarily, which might make it tricky to track somebody that's moving around or running through explosions or debris. Having to lose sight of them momentarily and then regain sight is not a great feeling in the middle of combat. If you're not sprinting forward and you're not aiming down sight and you're just in sort of a standstill or a walking state, the magazine just obstructs so much of what you can see on screen. It's like having an actual just banana taped to your screen while playing the game. I've had too many enemies obstructed by this magazine. And although the Bren does suffer a little bit from the similar type of screen obstruction, it's nowhere near as annoying as I found it was with the Madsen. Especially in close quarter environments where you are expecting somebody to maybe sneak up on you from the left or the right, having that huge magazine obstruct a big portion of your visible range while running around does become an issue more frequently. So I really wanted to use the Madsen more on larger open maps. It generally seems to play into the Madsen's playstyle a bit more, since it's a accurate weapon, something that seems to be designed a bit more for medium long range. It won't be as big of an issue if it's obstructing my screen as much, because even if somebody does manage to hide behind the magazine of my weapon a little bit, usually they're going to be far away, so it shouldn't be as big of an issue as it is in close quarters. Now, if I were to look at the Madsen's performance outside of its visual obstructors on screen, I might say that it's an interesting competitor to the Bren. You get 10 more rounds with what feels like a slightly less accurate weapon in general. Is that a good trade-off? It's hard to say. With such a slow rate of fire, losing a little bit of your consistency to hit further range targets might not be a good enough trade-off in my opinion. I personally, just from a gut feeling, felt like I was enjoying the Bren a lot more when I used it compared to the Madsen. The extra 10 round magazine, which I think is definitely worth getting on the progression tree for this gun, just again doesn't feel like it's giving you a big leg up on the Bren, and that's without counting the massive visual obstruction that you get from the Madsen over the Bren, and that annoying ADS animation of having to bring the magazine across your screen just to ADS. When it comes to optics, I was predominantly using the 3x optic on here because, again, playing into its strengths, which I think are medium range engagement distances, you're going to want that magnified optic to try and hit targets as accurately as possible. Ideal circumstances for the Madsen, I would say, are going to be like most other machine guns, or maybe even medium machine guns. The Madsen does have a bipod, which will increase its accuracy substantially, plus the 40 round magazine. You can use it as sort of a pocket MMG, just with a very slow rate of fire and high accuracy. So if you're an accurate shot, an accurate player, less interested in spammy gunfire, then this will be a bit more interesting to you. But playing defensively on some sort of grand operation or breakthrough style game mode, where you're not quite as worried about whipping around and finding flanks, but more watching corridors and linear maps, this is going to be more effective. If you're worried about people flanking you and having to whip around and spot targets a lot, this is going to be frustrating just because of the visual obstruction factor with this gun. If I had some feedback for DICE on balancing this weapon, I would say maybe changing the resting state of this weapon a little bit so that it doesn't obstruct so much of your screen when just simply walking around and looking around could certainly be a good place to start, and maybe modifying the ADS animation. I'm not really sure. It's so hard with a weapon that's decided to mount its optic to the right of the magazine, and yet we're shouldering the weapon on our right side, so it means always bringing that magazine across the screen to ADS. It's just awkward. I think it was probably an awkward design in real life, and it is proving to be awkward in game as well. So I guess DICE is staying true to real life, or true to the accuracy or authenticity of this weapon. I just don't know if it's something that I'd want to use on a regular basis. It did actually make me think that this gun might be easier or less frustrating to use if it were being shouldered on the left side. Like if your player were left-handed and you held it on your left shoulder and you brought the optic up to ADS on your left side of your face, you wouldn't have that annoying animation, and its resting spot on screen when just walking around would put the magazine much further off to the side of the screen, probably being less obstructive in general. I don't think that DICE will ever add a left-handed option in there to try and change it up. You know, there'd be so much animation work to try and mess with that setting, but it's kind of an interesting concept to think about. Anyway, that's my review of the Madsen MG. I fully ranked it up, used it on many different maps to try and get a good feel for it. It's definitely a usable weapon. It's accurate, but compared to the Bren, I don't think it's going to replace that gun for me when I'm looking for an accurate running gun LMG. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time. This is Level Cap signing off.